Part of the reason why we were discussing this event, and part of the reason why we wanted to do this event, together with Professor Marek, Frank, Elaine, and Wen Hui, was really what came out of a conversation that we were having together with Frank. In terms of um, as part of being assistant chair, one of my the things that we take care of is that we take care of students, and also we take care of alumni. And then Prof. Marek will take care of outreach. So, also kind of somewhat similar kind of nature of the job. And so we were thinking that CEO has really done a lot of things in terms of preparing students for careers such as, becoming an RA, and also careers in industry, and so on and so forth. But we know from our own employment results that actually a lot of students will enter into the academia pathway. Either they might become research assistants, they might go on to PhD, and then a lot of alumni also we figured would be along this path. So, they would be like research assistants at the moment, or they would be postdocs, maybe PhD students, and so on. So we thought that it would be a good time for us to also share our journeys, because CAO will get all these alumni to come back and share their journeys, and we thought, well, hey, we have a big pool of faculty around, so maybe we faculty can also share our own journeys and our thoughts along the way. So this is actually from my PhD graduation. I'm this one over here with the balloon, and this was in 2009. So yeah, so I did I'm Singaporean. I did my, I like born in Singapore, raised in Singapore. My surname looks a bit unusual because I'm Eurasian, so I'm half Chinese and I'm half Caucasian. And I did, junior college and everything. And so I did my undergraduates at Stanford on an A-star BS PhD scholarship. And so as part of the scholarship requirements, I spent 1 year as a research assistant in the Genome Institute of Singapore. And then after that, I decided to continue there as a PhD student for the rest of my journey. And this was under the because I was doing it at the GIS, so therefore the PhD was under the auspices of the NUS Graduate School for Integrative Sciences and Engineering, just because that's how A-Star arranges its PhDs. So during this time, I helped to develop SharePet, which was a new approach to understanding 3D genome organization in a genome-wide manner. And I helped to find that chromatin interactions are a very major mechanism by which gene transcription is regulated. After that, I was a postdoc at Duke NUS and Professor Shirish Shanolikar's lab. So I should also add that I had to serve 6 years of bond with A-Star. And so this was part of my bond. And during this time, I also managed to receive a Lee Kuan Yew postdoctoral fellowship, which was a higher salary. So that was kind of nice. Yeah. So then after that, I managed to be seconded as an assistant professor at Yale NUS. And at the same time, I also became a special fellow at the Cancer Science Institute. And then because I managed to get an NRF fellowship, so then I was promoted to principal investigator at the Cancer Science Institute. I was not very happy as an assistant professor in Yale NUS, mainly because of the lack of PhD students. And so this really was a big difficulty in terms of getting my research going. And so I came over to SBS on the 1st of July 2015. My lab now studies the 3D genome organization of cancer, and I'm also the assistant chair for students, covering the associate chair duties as well. So that's why we have no associate chair, because I am handling both hats, which is also why we have Professor Marek to cover as assistant chair of outreach. And also I teach BS 3004, which is a year 3 undergraduate course on cancer biology and therapy. I mean, makes sense. I study 3D genome organization of cancer. I'm also at the Cancer Science Institute. So, I mean, this is a course that kind of is the sort of course that I want to teach. And also I teach introductory molecular biology to JC students as part of H3 biology, which is the service course that SBS will run. So this is just some pictures of what things look like. So I'll just cover a bit about, what is it like along this journey. So first, you have the research assistant positions. I would say that the research assistant and the lab executive positions are somewhat equivalent, and depending on where you go, you will find they have different names. So some places will call them research associate, but basically it's just something that you do after your undergraduate. And there are some people who decide to go on to do this for a long time. But some people also will go on to do a PhD. So the responsibilities generally include first research, as well as two would be lab and general admin. So at least in my lab, so I should also mention that at least for Professor Marek and me, we are also employers. So we can also, I hired, I also have hired a number of SBS students in the past. And so I can also talk about being an employer from the employer perspective. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer those too. And so basically you tend to do research as well as lab and general admin. At least where I am at the Cancer Science Institute, it's a requirement to do both. If you only do one or the other, you don't get your full, it becomes problematic during appraisal. So this is a good time to think about your life. But what I have seen in terms of my my own students is that if you really are going to spend about more than 2 years thinking about your path, then most likely that's probably not the path that you're going to take. So basically, I had one student who really spent like 3 years thinking about whether she wanted to do a PhD. And in the end, she did do a PhD, but she dropped out after the first year because it just really wasn't her cup of tea. So, and I was saying, well, I mean, the very fact that you took so long to even decide on it kind of was a sign that, it's not really your cup of tea. Yeah. Oh, close the chat window because those appear as grayed out panels. Oh, I don't have any chat window open. Is it better now? Do I still have?
Prof. Melissa, do you want?
Yeah,
we see some boxes, or you want Elaine to have to share, or yeah, or
Oh, you see boxes, is it?
Yeah, because I think because we made you the co-host, so I think there's some boxes out there that will pop out.
Oh, okay. Maybe Elaine can share for me then. Sorry,
sure.
because I don't know how to solve this problem.
No problem.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Elaine. Yeah. So and so the career paths going forward for research assistants, because I know that this is the usual sorts of questions that people tend to ask is, well, what can I do? So the first is long service award. You can be actually a research assistant or a lab exec for the rest of your life if you actually choose that path. I actually do have a very, very long-serving lab exec in my lab, and she is very good. And also part of the reason she's in fact doing it part-time. And so I think that kind of works very well for her in terms of her family balance. Yeah, so that's one possibility. Another possibility is to go into admin. So I've had students who went into grant administration. Safety is also another possibility. You can also go into safety, and then after that, there are further paths that you can do. For example, working for, say, a petrochemical firm, where obviously safety issues are paramount. If not, people actually can die. You can go into something else that's science related. So like, for example, maybe do an MBA, maybe go into allied health, become a medical doctor. I've also had research assistants go on into those paths. And of course, you can go on to PhD, and also you can go on to something that's completely unrelated. So one of my friends who started out together with me on this biology journey is now writing fiction stories. So she's become a writer. So there are actually many career paths. So my advice over here is don't do a job because you are sorry for your degree. Like you feel like, oh, I need to do something bio related because my degree is in biology. I mean, yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, you are of course trained as a biologist, but you are trained for more than just, being a biologist during these 4 years. That's why you also will do things like, for example, teamwork, and there's a lot of things that you'll be trained to do. So I mean, is think of it as a training of the mind, and in at the end of the day, the main thing is really that like also don't care about what the faculty think either. We just really care that you are employed at the end. So I would suggest not to think too much about what other people think. Maybe next slide. Yeah. So what is the PhD? And so it's really this little bit at the end. So this tiny little bulge that you see at the end, which is basically just a little bit of addition to human knowledge. And it's basically your answer to the question of what is the most meaningful contribution I can make to society in these 4 years with the resources that I can obtain. So, I mean, you notice that it's a little bit nuanced. I mean, I didn't say, for the rest of your life, it's within a certain period, 4 years. So you have to also manage your time accordingly. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, and then when you're choosing a PhD lab, in many ways, a PhD is a bit like an apprenticeship with a PI. For better or for worse. So, there are many different types of PI. For example, I'm sure you all know of the slave driver. Oh, sorry. The lights tend to go off in my place. Yeah. Yeah. So for example, there is slave driver, which, the plus side is that you do get a lot done, but the minus side is that you forget everything else that's going on. And so there are actually true cycles who really do keep you on your toes, but are extremely scary. And then I've also met control freaks who, know exactly what experiment you're doing, and unfortunately know exactly what experiment you're doing. So and different people will of course have different relationships with people. For example, in my lab, I will actually have a different relationship with every single one of my students, who I also know as part of this chat today. So hello everyone. Because everyone is different, and so therefore the relationship that a PI will have would be very different. For example, there might be some students who are more independent, and so as a PI, you can give them more independence. And then there are some students who need a little bit more guidance. And so as a PI, you try to adjust a bit. But of course, it's impossible for a PI to be truly completely different between two different people. And so usually that isn't the case. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Yeah, so just be aware. I recommend reading the student handbook, which tends to be something that a lot of people don't do. But if you do actually read handbooks and policies, it's actually quite useful. For example, when I did that, I actually figured that I didn't need to take so much coursework because I'd taken some graduate classes that would replace them. And so I actually managed to get out of doing quite a number of coursework during my PhD. And also, you should plan to do most things yourself. You can't expect your PI to settle your thesis requirements for you. They are not your servants. And of course, you must keep safety and ethics a priority because your reputation is one of your most precious assets. Next slide. Yeah, and also a PhD is really not like studying for an exam. It does not follow a linear ratio between effort and success, but usually you have to have a lot of effort. But so what happens is that a lot of students, they come and then they are very disappointed by year 2 because they're still like, what have I done? I haven't got, I was planning to have 3 papers by the time I graduate, and now I don't have a single paper. But what happens is that because you need to spend some time like basically learning how to bike before you can, do a marathon. And, that's the time that you spend training. So usually it's the case that your work output will actually increase significantly by the time that you graduate. And so actually in the end, it might actually be possible to publish 3 papers or, one very good paper or whatever. Yeah, next slide. So then what happens after the PhD? So most people who are inclined towards academia will tend to do postdoc, but of course there are other alternative careers. And so I would suggest that you start to do your job search fairly early and, of course there will be people that you can only really commit about like 2 to 3 months before your PhD ends. However, during that 1 year in advance, you can start looking at labs and thinking about what would be the sorts of places that you might want to go for. You can also apply for fellowships and awards. And so there are many different types of PhD of postdocs. Some of them are the 9-to-5ers, some of them are the gunners and put in long hours, and some of them really have very strange attitudes, and you don't really understand them very much, and you're not very sure you really want to understand them very much. So only a small percentage will ever go on to a PI position. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so the general route for academia PI is that you do a PhD, then a postdoc, then assistant professor. Then if you get tenure, then associate professor, and then after that, full professor. And we would usually be evaluated on what we call the 3-legged stool, which means that it's research, teaching, and service. So I actually just showed at the start what my research, teaching, and service are. So those would be the 3 things that I would, for example, be evaluated on. And then if you're a research institute PI, then it's kind of similar to academia, but with minimal teaching. And so therefore you would be expected to spend more time on the other stuff. And they may also have like some industry requirements, like for example, they may have certain expectations of your ability to translate stuff into the clinic or into industry to make money, that sort of thing. And then you also have industry PIs, which are also similar in the sense that you are running a lab, but also different because there you have to meet a lot of the industry deliverables. Yeah, next slide. So becoming a PI, one of the questions that you have is how will you differentiate yourself from your ex-bosses? So basically you're a member of a lab and you're trying to, it's inevitable that you would be competing with your ex-boss. And so then the question is, how do you differentiate yourself from your ex-boss? Because your ex-boss has been in that position for maybe 10 years or maybe even more. So they definitely command quite a good they have a great command of the field, and everything is relatively smooth running in the lab because they've been running the lab for 10 years. So you can't hope to be completely smooth running like even in your first few years. So how will you differentiate yourself so that you have a niche? What's the main hypothesis for your lab? What's the environment or the fit that you are going to be in? And nobody wants to hire somebody who will not be successful. On one hand, that does make it difficult to be hired. But on the other hand, if you are hired, then that means that they think that you have a good chance of doing the job. So, don't go in thinking, oh no, I'm going to fail, because, if you're hired, that means that they think you can make it. Then also take a look at the people who have been successfully passed tenure or been promoted, because it will give you a good idea of what is realistic. So it's a good idea not to enter into a place expecting to publish like 10 major papers before you get tenure, when you look around and you see that the sort of general papers published are pretty much like 6 major communications type level of paper. So then you can actually adjust your expectations, and you can try to pursue those types of papers. And of course, go for conferences, don't hoard your data. A lot of our job actually has got networking, although it might not seem very obvious, but there's actually a lot of peer reviewing that goes on. This is at the tenure level, and it also happens in terms of your grants. So it is valuable for you to be known in the field. Next slide. Yeah, so there's actually a lot to read about. So you can, the science and nature all have got resources for you to read about. And of course, there are also blogs online that you can find by Googling. So just read about this some more. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, and so some of the challenges that are commonly faced by scientists are like imposter syndrome, sort of feeling inadequate. So, but you're not alone and you can do it. But don't trust social media. And so, just kind of it is very challenging, but a lot of people can rise to the challenge. Women in science do face special challenges. I'm happy to discuss them later on during Q&A. And then also, like in terms of maintaining motivation, it's a long journey. So you can think of things like, why did I go into science? Try to think long term. And in terms of coping with problems, talk with people, don't isolate yourself and make some plans. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So finally, also have fun and, pursue other passions. I believe that you will do your best science when you're kind of somewhat happy at least. So try not to make it a torture because otherwise you might be torturing yourself for the rest of your life. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So with that, thank you very much for listening. And I think we'll take questions after Professor Marek's talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Melissa, for this wonderful sharing, all the way from undergrad days at Stanford to GIS at A-Star and all the way to NUS and landing herself in NTU SBS in 2019 or 2015. Okay, I think Prof. Melissa really brought a very good point that, really don't feel sorry for the degree that you study in. I feel don't be limited by SPS degree that you study in, right? And pursue really your passion for this. Okay, maybe in the interest of time, we'll move on to Prof. Marek. I understand Prof. Marek has a very exciting and unusual journey, right? We will really want to hear from him. Okay, Prof. Marek? Yep.
Okay, guys. So let's give it a shot. Do you guys see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes. Yes, Prof. Marek. Yep.
Is it like
yes,
large
it's
enough?
presentation mode. It's in presentation mode. Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, guys. Yeah. So as Frank said, my journey is somewhat unusual and probably not as good as good looking as Melissa's. So okay, let's see if you will ask me to give this presentation next year. I think not. Okay. Good. So I mean, first a little bit about myself. So I consider myself European. So I was born in Poland, but I moved when I was 13, actually, to Copenhagen, to Denmark, and then I lived around 14 years in Denmark, where I got my master's in green biochemistry, and then I moved to Germany, and I stayed there for 10 years. And then in 2017, I moved back to Singapore. So basically, I don't know what I am. I mean, I have Polish passport, but I don't consider myself Polish. I would consider myself more Danish than but I'm an European. So Denmark has a very, very, very different educational system than Singapore. So it's basically a welfare state, and you pay huge taxes. But the advantages are that you are kind of covered in almost any aspects from cradle to grave. So the education is free, and you actually get money to study, right? So when you start your degree, you get money for 6 years, and it's kind of enough to actually move out and live on your own. So I actually moved out when I was 20 years old. And what's funny is that when you start your studies, there's, let's say, 300 people, and the teacher tells you, okay, look to your left, look to your right. After 1 year, half of those people will be gone, right? And it's not because the exams are tough. It's just that the mentality is very different. So I think compared to here in Europe, it's okay. It's kind of okay to fail, right? So I think it's quite common that my colleagues decided, I don't want to study this, then they stopped, or they took 1 year off to work, or they took 1 year off to travel around the world, or just do something different. So actually the average age of people who have a master's degree and graduate in Denmark was 30. So I was actually one of the young ones. I was 27. So yeah, I think this is a very different situation than in here. I think here there's a lot of pressure and this fear of failure. So I will tell you about my journey. I just don't know how applicable it is to the situation here in Singapore. Okay, so I was kind of an unmotivated student. So I was good at math, biology, and chemistry. I think all of us were, right, in high school. I thought I wanted to be a scientist, although I think I had not a real idea what it is. And I kind of somehow was talked into studying biochemistry at the University of Copenhagen, because I like chemistry, biology, so it was kind of natural. However, there was one problem. My true passion was actually online gaming. So I started to play this online game in around 2001, and I found individuals online who had similar passion, and it just got out of hand. So basically, I think we're like getting up at 4 p.m. and like playing until I think 2 a.m. at night, like all the time. So I was neglecting my studies and my grades were really bad, but I somehow managed to pass all of the courses. And eventually I said, all right, I don't want to study. And I know I just took 1 year off just to play computer games. And to pay the bills, I was actually working in a post office, a really awful job from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So this was the highest paying thing I could do. And I did it for 1 year. And I think the advantage of this was, first, I got the gaming out of my system because I kind of reached my highest level. And second, working in a job like this made me realize, okay, I want something better, right? So, but still, it was year 4. I entered year 4. I took myself together. I decided, okay, I'll put in some efforts, and I started to get good grades, but I still did not know what to do, right? And I somehow ended working on plants first because I sent an email out to several PIs, and the plant PI replied first and took me in. And the PI asked me, like, why do you want to study plants? And I told him, well, look, I don't really want to study plants specifically because I think everything is interesting in a way, right? So I think bacteria are interesting, viruses are interesting, etc. So, but that was fine. And I started working there. And it was really nice because there was tremendous freedom. You could do more or less what you wanted when you wanted. But again, I did not enjoy doing lab work because when you start working in a lab, it puts you off into some really crappy job, like grinding samples, isolate DNA, and some other things. So, but then something special happened. I actually took a Python course, which is very similar to the computational thinking, and then I got a taste for bioinformatics. I was, I think, 24 by then. And, I finished the course, but then, the question was like, okay, I know how to program now. What should I do with it? Right. But then just by coincidence, a colleague of mine showed me a paper where they use gene expression data to perform co-expression analysis. And I was like, wow, you can use gene expression data to actually predict gene function. That's pretty amazing, right? So I decided, okay, can I repeat the analysis in this paper? And yes, I could make it to work. And then, I started to think, okay, what's next with this? And then I thought, maybe if I, perform this additional analysis, for example, combine gene expression with protein sequence similarity. And I got some really exciting results, right? And then I realized, well, why not do this? And why not do that? And why not, do some other analysis? And actually, once I had those analyses, why don't I share those tools with others? And I made a web tool. And it was really cool. So it was an incredibly intensive time for me. So I was kind of coding, I think, 16 hours a day for like 6 months. It was extremely exhausting, but extremely satisfying experience. And I discovered it's fun and I'm good at it. And I think it was because, those things often go together. You're often good at things that bring you joy, right? And the tool was well received by my colleagues and by the community. And, I could actually publish it in 2008 in Nucleic Acid Research. And I was actually the corresponding author because my PI was a molecular biologist. So he didn't have a clue what I was doing. He just said, all right. So what I really liked about all of this is, I realized, okay, I can do something useful, and I can be my own boss. I can, decide the time, place, and the ideas, which I really enjoyed. Okay, so then I started to do a PhD. So I moved to the Max Planck Institute of Molecular Plant Physiology in Germany. So there I continued working on bioinformatics, and again I worked in the molecular biology lab. And the PI was hugely supportive of my interest, and I really like the social life. So we're like partying like almost every week. And then I decided, okay, I still don't know what to do for my postdoc. So I told my PhD supervisor, all right, let's hang out a bit more. And then my plan was actually to move out to some prestigious lab, maybe California, to work on bioinformatics. But then something very unusual happened. So the Max Planck director came over to my office and he was like, "Oh, Marek, hi, would you like to have your own group?" I was like, "All right." And then he was, "Okay, here's the lab." So yeah, I started this group like very early, so less than 1 year after PhD. And I think Melissa mentioned this. I mean, starts can be quite difficult, right? So the resources were great, but when you start so early, you have to ask yourself, what should I do, right? And how should it be, different from what I've done before? So yeah, one has to find one's niche, and this can be extremely difficult. So it took me a while, but I think in the end it went okay. So then after a while, you get kicked out from Max Planck. So after my 5 years, I find something else, and I'm very fortunate to have arrived to NTU. And then when you move, you have to figure out what to do, which also fits with the local environment. And in Singapore, we couldn't say, okay, I want to work in crops, because there are no crops in Singapore. So we decided to switch to medicinal plants, and there we're combining bioinformatics, plant physiology, to study how plants survive adverse conditions, how they control metabolism to do that, and how bioactive metabolites are being made in medicinal plants. So look, I think this is a very, I would guess, maybe unusual journey, I don't know. But my thoughts on this is, you should really try to find what you like. This is really key, and this is always what has been driving me, and that I am in this position that I am now. It was just me kind of listening to myself and trying to figure out what I'm good at. So basically, as I said before, I think we're all good at something, right? And it can be very difficult to find out what it is quite often. And we tend to be good at things that we like, right? So I think the only option to figure out what you're good at and what you enjoy is to try things out. So, for example, bioinformatics. I think nowadays you have many opportunities to actually go into this, and those opportunities were, for example, not present when I was studying. Right? I know at NTU you have opportunities to take any course without risking to get a bad grade for it, right? So if there's something in the back of your mind saying, okay, maybe this sounds really cool, just go for it, right? So try to find what you like, and once you found it, really give it 120%, like really don't be afraid to test your limits as well. Okay, so that was basically it. So I think Melissa did a great job covering the other aspects. I wanted to give you a more kind of a maybe not so straightforward aspect of the whole thing. Okay, that's it from my side. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Marek. Yeah, it was really an unusual journey. You enjoy what you do, that even you're taking 1 year off to become a big gamer. Yeah, but I particularly like what Prof. Marek, you shared at the end, that you really need to find and try many things and find the one that you really enjoy. Yeah, and have fun along the way. Ken? Okay, I think we can thank Prof. Melissa and Prof. Marek for their wonderful sharing. Okay, maybe we can now, in the interest of time, okay, we really want to engage the students. So any students have any questions, can you all feel free to actually unmute yourself and then ask our guests here, our panelists here. Yep. Okay, anyone? Okay, if you're feeling shy, you can actually type it in the chat box in the Zoom. Yep. Okay, anyone have any burning questions you want to ask Prof. Melissa and Prof. Marek? Okay, maybe I kick off first. I always get these questions from students when they come to CEO to see us. Okay, maybe I can I can pose this question to both professors. Okay, they always ask this. Okay, as the career coaches, that should I really go out to work first to gain more work experience, or should I immediately jump in, right, to pursue a PhD? Yeah, maybe anyone, any thoughts from Prof. Melissa or Prof. Marek?
I suppose I can. Oh,
yeah, please.
Why don't you go first? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it doesn't. I think it doesn't look bad. I mean, no, I think I would ask, once interviewing the person, I would ask, okay, so you took 1 or 2 years off or more. So why did you do it? And why are you coming back to academia? Right. So I think it doesn't look bad at all. Yeah.
So from my perspective, so if you really know right from the start that you know you really want to do a PhD and you really don't want to do anything else, then obviously don't take the break. Go straight into the PhD, because there are some students that I know who are like that, and for them it doesn't make any sense for them to take a break. But I personally did take a break. It was required by A-STAR. So they had this idea that we would lose our ties to Singapore, and they had to bring us back for 1 year before we started our PhD. Otherwise, we would forget that we're Singaporean or something. So they actually, it was a requirement. And in my case, it actually worked out very nicely for me, because I spent my one year of RA basically being in my future lab. So during that time, I actually already started my research project. So on paper, it looks like my PhD was only 3 years long. But actually it was really 4 years, because it's just that I was paid during that 1 year. So especially if you're using that as a way to kind of, use that to kind of, just basically learn some new skills or whatever, I think it does not, it will not hinder you very much. It might even be a benefit. But one thing I would say is don't take too long to go back into academia. Don't spend more than 2 or 3 years as an RA if you intend to do a PhD in the future.
Yeah. Okay, thank you both, Prof. Okay, we getting questions from the students. Maybe you start off first from Clarissa Lim. Okay, actually Clarissa asked Prof. Melissa, could you maybe elaborate more on the challenges women face in science?
There are a few challenges that women will face. The first challenge is that of childbearing and child rearing. So of course, you can talk about many things, but at least in most parts of the world, usually the burden of childbearing and child rearing will fall disproportionately on women. And so it's quite common for women to have to make certain sacrifices in their career, or even even if you're not planning to start, even if you're not planning to have kids right away, you might start to also choose paths that will allow you to kind of not work such crazy hours in a day.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Melissa, for really this genuine answer to that. Okay, in the interest of time, we quickly move on to the next question. Maybe for Prof. Marek for the next question. Okay, so actually the students would like to know, is there any differences in pursuing a career in research in the university setting compared to in the corporate world, like in a biopharma company?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been in biopharma, but there are clear differences. So, I think when you do research, you typically have your own projects, and this project goes on for sometimes years, right? In a biopharma, in a company, the projects can be shorter, and there it's very important you stick to the deadlines, right? So I think in companies you have to deliver at some point, and it happens quite often that you work on a project for years, you put your heart into it, and then suddenly the upper management says, okay, this is not this is not leading to a product and then it's being killed all of a sudden. So I think in academia, in research, you have more freedom, right? You have more ownership of the project, but I think you typically might put in more hours than you would do in industry. Of course, salaries are probably also lower in academia than in the industry. But I think maybe job security could be maybe higher in industry than academia, although yeah, this can also vary. Yeah, so I think academia, freedom, ownership, industry, maybe less working hours, kind of more product oriented. Yeah.
Okay, Ken. Thanks. Thank you for Prof. Marek for the answer. Okay, Ken. Maybe Prof. Melissa, anything to add for this? Okay,
Go
Ken. Great. Okay, Ken. So the next question will be, I think should be just now Prof. Melissa mentioned about the imposter syndrome, is it? Yeah. Okay. We want to take the question that is there any red flags that they should take out to indicate that maybe this route is not for them?
Yeah, sure. So this is Vinta's question. Criteria we can use to differentiate actual incompetency from imposter syndrome. So I would say if you are, like, let's say you are taking your upper level undergraduate classes. Like, let's say you only really are passing a class because maybe you memorize the entire textbook, but you don't really understand what's going on, or like maybe you do the critical thinking questions, and those are the ones that kind of elude you, like you never feel like you grasped the situation, or maybe you do journal club, which is quite common in upper in like the year 3 and year 4 classes, and you find every single paper completely boring and meaningless. Those would be the red flags not to choose academia, because you're pretty much going to do more of that. But if you really absolutely hate doing like your FYP, writing that research report at the end, don't choose academia. Yeah.
Okay, Ken. Thank you, Prof. Melissa. Okay, next one question is from Shemaine. Okay, Ken. Are there any general skills that we recommend the students to learn before pursuing a PhD, or are they, maybe I could phrase a little bit, what are key skills that's necessary to pursue a PhD? Anyone from the from Prof. Marek or Prof. Melissa?
To be honest, I mean, I don't think you should study to start a PhD. I think, I mean, you're given 3-4 years to do it, and I think you learn things as you progress, right? So I wouldn't say study this and then you can do a PhD. What I can do, for example, is if somebody tells me, okay, I want to do bioinformatics, then I tell this person, okay, take this 4-hour course in programming, and then let me know whether you like it or not, right? So maybe this, because it sucks to do something for 4 years which you don't enjoy or you're not good at. So I don't say you have to study something, I don't know, teamwork, blah blah. No, that's not necessary. But I often try to make the students take something very specific to just figure out whether it's something for them.
I guess just to add to this, the skill that I would suggest is the ability to Google something, so basically the ability to see something that's foreign looking, and you're like, I have no idea what this is talking about. And what you do is that you then Google it, and then you sort of learn what's about it. Like, for example, Marek had the example of bioinformatics. You don't know bioinformatics, so you try to, Google it, you find a Coursera course, you take that course, or maybe you watch some YouTube video about Hi-C method or whatever, and in that way you learn your knowledge. So it's the ability to learn things that are not necessarily taught like in a formal course.
Okay, Ken. Thank you, Prof. Melissa. I think Google is our best teacher, right, for all of us. Ken, I particularly like Prof. Marek's practical tips that taking certain modules can actually really give you the sense of how is it like before you really embark on 4 years for a PhD. I think that's really a very practical tip from Prof. Marek. Okay, so maybe I think I do get these questions also from our students every time, from Bobby, that does the ranking of the university actually matters for the PhD? Or where should you take this PhD? Yep. Anyone? Yeah.
I think, I mean, so so after you complete the PhD, right, you are looking for a job, typically as a postdoc. So there I am rather looking at publications, right? So I am trying to see if this person published first author papers, on what topic, and in which journal. So, but where the person is coming from, no, it doesn't really matter to me. So I would rather prefer somebody who has impact factor. I know 5 paper from wherever than somebody who has nothing from Cambridge, right? That's basically it. But of course, try to go to as good a place as you can, because you're going to have I think good colleagues if you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously publications are what really count in terms of getting a postdoc position, but there is a correlation between where you go and the papers you publish. Like, I mean, it can be anywhere that you can go anywhere, but I mean, you have to choose a good PI. But places like, for example, Harvard, they tend to have lots of good PIs. So, if you go there, you're probably going to get somebody who is pretty good. I mean, unless you choose really badly. But I would suggest that when you are looking for PhD places, go instead and look at the various PIs and kind of list down where they are, and then after that apply to those schools. But of course, sometimes that might truly mean that you end up with like Harvard and MIT and stuff like that. And I mean, obviously, go and try if that's where you want to go.
Okay, Ken, thank you both, Prof. Okay, this next question I think is very closely related to the previous one, and also get this quite a lot of times from students who are thinking of PhD. Okay, it's really, should you pursue the PhD locally? May not be NTU and NUS, or overseas. They are worried about this thing called inbreeding. What are your thoughts about this?
Melissa, you want to go, or should I?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. So I would say that if you are going to do a PhD locally, then I would suggest that you do your postdoc overseas. If you're going to do your PhD overseas, you could probably do a postdoc in Singapore, but you'll need to kind of find a suitable lab. It also depends on where you want to be a PI. Like, for example, I know of Singaporeans who then start a lab in China. So in that case, if you have done your PhD and postdoc in Singapore and then you move to China, immediately there is no inbreeding anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to say. I mean, I might hurt myself because I think there are many excellent students at SBS who would like to do a PhD in my lab. So you're welcome. But look, I think it would be good for many people to see the outside world a bit more, right? Especially if you want to stay in Singapore, you want to retire here and be just live the rest of your life. So I would recommend that you go out and see something different for some years and gain some experience and a larger worldview. So yeah, I recommend that you go out and get PhD and outside, especially as Melissa said, if you want to do a postdoc in Singapore and look for something more long term. Except if you want to go to my lab, then you are welcome to do PhD in my lab. Okay? Yeah.
So I guess probably after today's, you have a lot of emails requests, maybe from our final year students. Okay. Okay. Yes. Is there any questions from the audience, from the students, maybe alumni also, who are thinking of actually we graduated maybe last year and all this, you are thinking of pursuing a PhD? Any more questions from the audience? Okay, maybe I think we have one. From so the students asking you, Prof. Marek, do you enjoy the game for the 1 year break that you took?
Oh yeah, look, it was, I know it was a completely stupid thing I did, but I would still do it again. It was quite priceless, so I got it out of my system. And it's nice to play together in a clan. We're like a unit, like a clockwork. It's a nice feeling. Yeah.
So will you consider taking a sabbatical?
No. I really got it out of my system. So I think that was very important to do it. And then you wake up one morning and you say, okay, what's the point?
I guess you found your passion or your love for this. Yeah, for
Yeah,
your,
yeah.
for your current role now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ken, okay, Ken, is there any okay, I think a good question that we always get from the students. What about work-life balance? Is it impossible?
Okay, Melissa, you take this one.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, I know Lucia, so yeah, I would say it's not impossible. I would say that you can have a work-life balance. I know a lot of people who actually, have like families and everything. I would say that it's a little bit. There's also, I would say that it looks harder than it is sometimes. I mean, of course, you can't really slack. You can't spend your days like I mean, you can't like not work. But if you compare this with other jobs, like for example, maybe finance or like being a medical doctor, those jobs are even harder to have work-life balance, I think. So I think actually academia does is actually not so not quite so terrible as that. I personally feel that I can actually have a work-life balance.
Yeah, so maybe from me. So, I mean, I tend not to look at the watch for people in my group. So, I hope they have a good work-life balance. I mean, for myself, I mean, as I wrote, if you love what you do, it's not work anymore, right? So, I think I put in long hours, but it's kind of like hobby, right? And once it's kind of like a hobby which they pay you for, it doesn't feel like work. Yeah.
I think I fully agree with the both prof that really if you found something that you really like and your passion is there, 10 hours in the lab just feels like 1 hour. That's relative. Yeah, I always agree with this. That it may not be the lab, it may not be research, it may be in other areas. As long as you found the passion is there, work-life balance. You also think about your work even after work. It's okay. You're okay with that. Yeah, even at home and all this. Okay, you do know that because you have a passion for your work. Yeah, I think I fully agree with both prof on this. I think okay, Ken, although we are a little bit late, but we will still maybe prof was okay. We take the rest of the questions. Yeah, I think there's one more from Paul also. It's PhD almost always sponsored.
Yeah. In general, for PhD, you should be able to get a PhD scholarship that will pay for it. If you can't and you can only get a self-funded PhD, I would suggest that you think twice about it. Most places that are anything good, they would be willing to offer you a PhD scholarship unless you are, I don't know, really terrible. I mean, there are some people who do self-funded PhDs, but that's usually, there are some people I know who do self-funded PhDs, but that's because they want to do PhD part-time while doing their RA position as a full-time job because they have calculated and that gives them more salary and benefits even after minusing off the PhD fees. But that's a very small number of people. So I would usually recommend that you do a full-time scholarship.
Prof. Marek, anything to add on?
I wasn't even aware that there was non-sponsored PhD scholarship, so no comments.
No sponsorship from your to pursue a PhD in your lab?
No. I wasn't aware that it was optional, that it was not sponsored. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some people in A-Star who do that because yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we have some students like that. Yeah.
Okay, Ken. Okay, Ken. I think that's all from the questions from all the audience. Okay, I think we really today have a very active audience. Is it possible for all of us to? I think Prof. Melissa and Prof. Marek really share a lot of nuggets of gold today. Okay, Ken, it's really rare for professors to take time off their busy schedule to really share with us in this 1 hour setting. Okay, is it possible for all of us to really turn on our camera? Okay, then to have no photo taking with our prof here for their sharing with us. Okay, is it possible for everyone? Okay, Ken. Okay, keep it coming. Right. Okay. Okay, shall we smile at the camera? Yep. Okay, great.